Yes, I'm putting my underwear on the internet. Don't make it weird. So I recently reached the point where I could no longer close my drawers for where I store all my clothes. So I did a clothing clean out, all the good stuff went to the op shop. The stuff that's not good enough to donate, but I'll still wear it and don't like it. Those are now my gardening and painting clothes. But what do you do with your underwear? And oh my God, is that bird gonna use the bath? We may interrupt this introduction to look at a currawong using our new bird bath, possibly. Anyway, what do you do with all of your underwear and socks and bras? You can't donate those in Australia. You can donate like decent bras, but you can't donate underwear and socks. Also can't go to textile recycling places. I had an idea. So I am obsessed with fiber arts. You may have realized that. I love texture. I have been saving for a while a lot of these kind of reference images that I just love looking at them, particularly like Boro and Sashiko. Like I could just stare at this kimono forever. This image in particular, oh my gosh, this art and also quite a few of my stitching references, it turns out, I think are all by Ibrahim Mahama. He is, as of today, my favorite artist. I saw this wall hanging, I'm gonna move over here. I saw this wall hanging and I was just like, oh, that's it. We're making a wall hanging. It's not gonna look like that. But I am gonna stick with the colors of blacks and grays, obviously. I mean, have you met me? Not only because they're my favorites, but also because a lot of it's already kind of dark and then I can always dye things to be darker, but I can't get them lighter. So the plan is I'm gonna sew these as different panels and then join them together at the end. I've saved about 18 different examples of fabric manipulation and textures. I also have some in my brain that I couldn't find reference images for. Yeah, I'm really excited to kind of just have a play. We're gonna do some of them machined, we're gonna do some of them hand sewn. I'm gonna have a go at weaving, which is a terrible idea because I haven't researched it in the slightest, but I just, you know, I feel like I could do it. Materials. This is my tub of all of these socks and underwear that we have thrown out recently. Some t-shirts. There's, oh my gosh, these pajama pants. I wear everything to death. These are really destroyed and I just found them at the top of my cupboard yesterday. But have a listen to this. This is the elastic. It has completely disintegrated. I've also got a very old and stained sheet that I am going to dye and use as our base. I've got some yarns to have a play with. Probably gonna dye that too. And I've got like 4 of these, which are all of my fabric offcuts. And I wonder why I'm having storage problems. Let's get sorting. Oh dear. I got started sorting everything by fiber and whether or not it needed to be dyed. I also removed any decent elastic for later use. Some of this underwear is completely fine, it's just I ordered it online and it's uncomfortable so I don't wear it. Now this is fun. I switched my camera to slow and quick mode, thinking it was a time lapse, but that's on my other camera and this one is set to slow, so I did all of this sorting in slow motion. And here is where Thomas walked in and asked why I had it on S&Q and I told him it's a time lapse and he said no, it's on slow motion. But here's the kicker. I didn't fix it. So here are the fabrics that don't need to be dyed. Some linen scraps in there, nice. Cotton and wool that does need to be dyed. And what I guess are the synthetics. I decided I wanted the wall hang to be about the size of this wall here. I figured I'd do a 4x4 configuration. So here is me measuring that out in slow motion. Here is me measuring out a pattern piece in slow motion. Here is me explaining, I actually don't know what. Here I am cutting out the pattern in slow motion. And here I am cutting out some fabric in slow motion. If you think this bit is going on for way too long, trust me, I know. Even better, my SD card wasn't inserted properly apparently, and a lot of this footage is also corrupt. I wish I was kidding. Anyway, here is me explaining that I want to try this style for the first piece while I wait for the dye bath. Not sure what I'm doing with my hands there. And I feel very clever because I'm going to cut some of the socks this way to make the rings. There I go. I sped this up. I began stitching this one on the edge of the couch so I can keep an eye on the dye pot because we may or may not have had one boil over last time and that would be scary if that did happen, which I'm not saying it did. When the first batch of dyeing was done, I hung it out to dry. I filmed this through the window because it was raining a bit and it was very unsafe for the camera, I assume. The good news is I finally fixed the camera for the only truly important shot of the day. Alfie, I don't think you want to go outside. I don't think you want to go outside, it's raining. Yeah, I didn't think so. And here is where I finally realized. Yeah, awesome. I think I'm gonna go have an ice cream. This is not a great start to the project to have filmed everything in slow motion on the first day. Let's keep going. After I put the next dye batch on, I had an ice cream and thought about what I'd done. But then it was back to stitching. Good morning. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to buy anything for this project. I was going to try and keep it all stuff that I already own, but I needed more pegs because there's so many little things that need drying. Now the Rit dye, as promised, has come out really patchy, which is great because that's what we wanted. So look, it's pretty good. Why is it green though? We do have an additional problem with the whole not buying anything. Some of these are synthetic. And like unbelievably, I made the mistake again of thinking that the all-purpose dye works on polyester. It doesn't. So we might have to go out and get some synthetic dye because yeah, it looks like the colored parts might be synthetic and the rest is cotton. Oh, this is very close. Some of these have turned out really nice. The Hessian looks awesome. So yeah, cool. I don't know if that's cool. Also, as an update, this is our new bird bath. It suits the bigger birds much better. We're keeping the small one for the smaller birds. So far, only one magpie has used it, but it's hopefully gonna be warm today, so I will let you know if we have any takers. I had already gone through all the Rit dye at this stage, so I switched to my favorite landscapes dye for cotton from Craft Color, which gives really solid results, unlike the Rit dye. Then I finished up that first piece. It's not my favorite, to be honest, but I do like that it reminds me of coffee mug stains. This is a leftover practice swatch from when I was learning to knit, and I thought it was too pretty to unravel, so I'm glad to finally have a use for it. I added some more tassel thingies to the end, and I also made a makeshift little hank to dye some extra as well. For this lot, I used the Landscapes dye for wool, also from Craft Color. Seriously, these are the only dyes that I have found that perform consistently. Oh, hi! Did you want to go outside? Yes? No? It's hard to tell. Go have a look. Kind of a nice day. No, not interested. Okay. Okay. No, that's okay. You don't have to go out. He's such a good job. He's such a good job. Yes. So helpful. Oh, careful. Careful. That's my pattern. Oh yes, for the second piece I wanted to do this slashing technique, but I wanted it to look a bit more organic, so I planned to do sewing lines that were closer together and not quite so straight. Then I realized that I may want to practice this first in case I don't like it, because even though I have so much fabric, I still don't want to waste it. But as you can see, I did like it, so we're all good. I even managed to find a use for that test piece later, so I don't waste that either. I don't know if it's becoming apparent, but I have a pretty strong aversion to waste, which is hard to balance when you like making things and thusly create a lot of waste. I think that's the first time in my life I've ever used the word thusly. Oh, I don't know if I should be explaining what I'm doing here, but I'll do it anyway. You basically just cut through every layer of fabric except the base layer. I use woven fabric scraps for this, but I have since I made this scene done with stretch fabrics, which results in no fraying. So that would be a really different look, but I'm messy and I'm going for messy with this thing. Alright, so we have these two so far, and like they're feeling a little bit too perfect, do you know what I mean? Like even though they're not perfect, they feel a little bit too like I stuck two things next to each other. It's time to get a bit messy with it. Ugh, speaking of, too much mess. Next, I want to try this style here, because now that our Hessian is dry, I think some layering, some messy stitches, that sounds good for my soul. Ripping it just gives it a better texture. So I had this idea, the elastic in the underwear, feels very weird doing this, can be the lines on this. I think he's a customer. Which one are they gonna choose? Are you gonna go big bowl or little bowl? Go on with small bowl. Okay. We got you a bigger one. Okay, bye. Thanks for stopping by. They went with the big one. Yay. See, that's better. They'll learn. Best $35 we've ever spent. I used embroidery floss, which of course you can barely see here, and tried to make my stitches look kind of random and haphazard, which I find actually takes more brain power than just doing neat stitches all in the same direction. Update time. I have chocolate in my teeth, don't look. I'm happy with how this one's going. I'm having fun with that. I did realize that I'm going through this embroidery floss like crazy, so I succumbed and bought more. I also got some synthetic dye because we're looking a little too colorful here. So this is our fabric pile. That's quite immense. We also have those ones there. This is how the wool came out. These gray tights came out completely black, perfect. But this light gray only went to a dark gray, except that the wool here that was on there that was purple has gone black. So like, I guess this is a blend of some kind. This one went like a nice kind of charcoal, so I'm happy with that. But look at this. This didn't take at all, so I'm guessing this isn't really wool. I have this pile left of undyed stuff. And at this stage, I'm kind of thinking, I'm I'm gonna leave it because look at this gigantic pile of fabric that I have. But yeah, I'm gonna get that dye pot on and I'm gonna keep going with stitching. It's the same thing every day, but hopefully we're done. Hopefully this is the last lot. So I watched a Tiffany Ferg vlog while keeping an eye on the dye bath and finishing up the stitches. I'm really happy with that. I realized that I am at this stage pretty much just emulating other people's styles, but that's kind of how this works because as I started doing this, my internal voice was going, you should be better with this. I had to argue with it a little bit. Just because I've looked at a lot of this doesn't mean that I can do it or have done it. I have no experience making this kind of art. I think next, there's a reference image that I found that it kind of looks a little bit like water flowing, like a river, and that one has a lot of different textures in it. And so I think that could be a really good one for using up some of the socks and underwear because I'll twist them and scrunch them and you won't really be able to see what they are. Hopefully. Let's move on to the next one. For a lot of these, I chose to offset the worn out stretch fabrics with leftover muslin and linen. I just really prefer these textures and a lot of my reference images are using these fibers. Doing it this way allowed me to sort of hide the sock and underwear fabrics while still using them up. I followed the stitching style from the reference image to a fault here and I realized about partway through that it looked really flat and had lost a lot of the texture and movement that I liked about it. I mean, I'm pretty sure the reference image was a lot of silk, so it might be a number of factors that led to a why doesn't mine look like that moment. So for the second half, I incorporated more running stitches and I started to like it more. Good morning. I have updates. This one is finished. I think pretty good. I don't love how it started. As I got here, I kind of like let it get a little bit loosey-gooseier. So yeah, I'll probably do another one like this with a different direction, but more fabric. I'm realizing that these are a little light on fabric. I'm not getting through enough of it for the amount of panels that I have done, considering how much fabric there is. For the next one, I think I'm gonna try and do some like layering with a bunch of running stitches like this one here. And I'm gonna try and make it a bit thicker to get through some of the fabric we have. We can also hide some of the ones that didn't take the dye super well. And speaking of, let's have a look at how the synthetic ones went. The color is still definitely there. I've now dyed these with cotton dye and synthetic dye. So look, maybe I'm doing something wrong or maybe commercially dyed fabric doesn't work great with domestic dyes. It made them all darker and I can work with that. So with those ones, we might do like some layering to kind of hide some of the color. And the other thing I was thinking is we kind of like shred them, make them really thin, and then lay them together in kind of like this style here. I hope that editing me can figure out which one I'm talking about. It's like where they're real thick. And I think that could work. And I think it will help provide depth because I'm getting so out of breath just from talking. Let's do more stitching. These ones here like still very clearly say bonds on them and I don't like love that, so I think I'm going to kind of flatten these out a bit and kind of layer them up. Let's get some layers. Let's get this thick. Like I want this to kind of have like a pillowy feeling to it. So while my inspiration for this piece was Burrow and Sashiko, what I'm doing here is, I'm pretty sure, neither of them, because as you can probably guess, you're not supposed to put this many layers of fabric in there for reasons which may already be apparent to you, but which will become apparent to me in a little bit. I used my smallest doll making needle for this as it's way longer and sturdier than a regular needle, which makes it great for running stitches. Now a Sashiko needle would make the most sense, but I only have a Kogan needle and I thought there's no point ordering one, that will take like a week to get here and I'll be finished with this project by then. Can you guess if I finish this within a week? I had also considered ordering a Sashiko thimble because the only store that sold them anywhere near me closed their physical store, which is sad. So instead I cut a patch of scrap leather to help push the needle through. I can't tell you how much this was a mistake. Is that a sentence? This is a nightmare, but I'm continuing because I have already started and there's a sunk cost somewhere in there. I am so glad that this one is finished. Oh my God. I've given my hands the evening to recover and so we can get started on some new things. Never doing this again. Has to be individual layers. However, I do want to do for my next ones something similar to this because I really liked how this looked before I added all the stitching. So today I just want to have a play around with some textures, probably not using any particular reference images, and specifically some of these like fun texture pieces that I've got, like a little bit of knitting, this bit of, I want to say it's a blanket. I think today we're gonna get loose with it. So yeah, let's go do that. I cannot tell you what a relief it was to just be sewing through 2, maybe 3 layers of fabric. Just sewing the edges is absolutely the way to go when we don't actually need to do any reinforcing. This one was genuinely quite relaxing to do. I didn't have a system or much of a plan. I just sort of arranged it in the most pleasing way, and this one turned out to be one of Tom's favorites. This is around the time in the video, which happens surprisingly often, where I realized that while I feel like I had a good idea and that the final result will be cool, in terms of a viewing experience for you, I'm kind of just doing the same thing over and over again. So we're changing things up with the time lapse, which, while not as relaxing as the slow stitching shots, I do find it incredibly satisfying to look at. Let me know which style you prefer and I'll probably just keep doing what I feel like. Sorry. I started struggling straight away with this one, and I remembered that a couple of years ago, yes really, I bought some embroidery frames from the op shop that have been sitting in the cupboard ever since. This one was $4, the price tag was still on it, and it was the perfect size for this project. As predicted, this piece was great for using up socks, in particular those ones that still had more colour in them than I would have liked. By rolling them up, the designs that were still visible are pretty obscured. Also, if you're wondering about the jumping ahead in this one, my top-down camera batteries do this really cute thing, where they say they have 50% left, and then they just die like a minute into filming. Very deceptive. Oh, ow. I thought it was fluff in my mouth and it was hair that was still attached to my head and I pulled it and that hurt. I am feeling so vindicated right now. I bought this so many years ago. It still had the price tag on. I've never used it. I think I may make a stand for this at some point. I don't think that would be too hard, so I could like stand it on the table, but this has been fantastic. That made a huge difference for doing that one. And it took like no time at all to set it up. So yay, happy with that. Do you want to try out this one? It's inspired by these like costume kind of artistic images. I'm just gonna cut out a bunch of like loose rectangle shapes and then sew them down in layers and make something real fluffy. So that should hopefully use quite a bit of fabric, because I'm realizing that for each of these, they're just not using that much fabric. We still have so much to get through. Like, I don't think I've made a dent. I feel like my inability to like visualize volume and also time is a constant problem for me. This is one of those processes that's way more fun to watch, super sped up, and I don't know if it's just because I'm tired, but I just sat here for a while toggling this back and forth, just mesmerized. It looks like a spore growing. Okay, so ignore the state of the floor. I have cut out all of these ones and I'm thinking if I just sew them flat in like layers, they're just gonna sit fairly flat and I want it to have a bit more movement. So I'm gonna try something crazy. It's not crazy, it's very normal. I'm gonna try stitching them that way and then they fold downwards. I wasn't even pointing. Stitch them all in rows. It's not gonna look like this. Okay, so I stitch them all in rows this way and then they flop downwards with gravity and then it should have a bit more volume, a bit more, you know? Me immediately not liking how it looks. Also, I don't know how to explain this, but I'm doing this the hard way at first. Like I should just sew them in rows flat, then flip them over at the end. Well, it looks kind of cool that way too. So I realized I don't like it being flipped around, and actually sewing it flat is perfectly good. It provides the right amount of texture to it. It's also used up way more rectangles than I thought it would, and I had only cut enough to do half of it. So I think that's a net positive in terms of using up fabric. Also, we've recently discovered that one of those classic Australian suburban bakeries near us does amazing cinnamon donuts, and it's become a bit of an obsession in our household. They are so good and so cheap. For the last row, I hand sewed them on, and now no one can tell that they were machined at all. Not to be dramatic, but I love this one. And it was so much quicker than the others. Haha. That's like exactly what I was picturing. Yay. I think what I'm gonna do next is that like wobbly style one, but with more texture. And I think I'll do this one kind of horizontally. It'll make sense as soon as I start it. My plan for this one was to make it quite dense and sew the rows of fabric quite tightly. However, I realized partway through pinning that this was going to be somewhat of a stab hazard and might actually require more pins than I had. So I only put the framework in place and took it to the machine. I was quite enamored by how quickly that last piece had come together by machine sewing, and I was keen to keep that going. Unfortunately, it became clear pretty quickly that I wasn't going to get the look I wanted from machine sewing, so it was back to the needle and thread for me. I say unfortunately, but that's only in regards to how long this project took overall and the general delay in posting a video. I had a great time. I love hand sewing, and I was chilling with an L literacy video on screen cleans. This design I actually explained way earlier in the project, but it was so long ago that it didn't make sense to include it. Basically, I was accumulating a lot of tiny offcuts and loose threads, and I wanted to find a way to use them, so the goal for this one was just mess. This was super chill. I got real loosey goosey with it and did whatever I felt like, which is such an unusual feeling in sewing, and if you haven't done something like this, I highly recommend it. I feel like it kind of resets me for my next very precise sewing project. Now I realize that by this stage you've seen a lot of me just sewing, and I don't want you to get bored. So I'm going to show you some of my weird Facebook Marketplace finds. Sometimes when I have my coffee in the morning, I'll have a peruse and save whichever interesting things I find. So let me hit you with a jump scare first off. Injection molded baby. It's hand painted at a super rare find. I do remember that the description indicated that they were probably not going to sell it and that they would likely keep it for themselves in addition to the one they already had. Next up is this stunning jeans ottoman with pockets to store your remotes, and yes, thankfully it does come with the belt. This one I didn't get the prize for, but it is a recent find. It's a human-sized hamster wheel walking desk. Honestly amazing, and I think it got snapped up super quickly. Let me know if you want to see more of these. I have so many saved. We could probably make a whole video. So I can't So I can't remember at this stage if I mentioned that I wanted to have a go at some weaving. I have not looked up how to do weaving and I do not own a loom, but we have this thing that has spoonerisms are just this thing that is constantly in my brain. We have this thing that has proved fairly useful so far, and I figure I can kind of use it like a loom. So my plan is, I don't want to do it that way. I mean, I could do it that way, but then all of them are vertical, and I think I'll visually find it easier if I'm working vertically on this. So I'm gonna do something similar to this, of like wrap some fabric around the top so that we can put our threads on, and then try and weave some of the wool and macrame yarn that I've got, and also scraps, the many, many scraps that we still have to get through. That's the plan. Oh, and I also realized that I don't have a needle that I could use for this, but I have a double pointed knitting needle and some tape. It's gonna work. That angle's off. I think that's better. I don't know. Also, I lost one of my pictures. It's fallen down. It's gone forever. I've just realized the flaw in this plan, which I'm sure someone had already noticed. You don't normally sew the weaving structure. You loop it around like little pegs in the board or nails or something at the end. How do you sew with a super long piece of yarn and get it all the way across? Normally it's like a looping situation, so it's very easy to unravel your thread. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not explaining it very well, but I've made a mistake. But also, I'm just gonna keep going. It's already getting difficult. I figured that if I was patient enough, I could feed the yarn through not unlike a corset. Those were annoying as hell to lace, but I still make them all the time. So really, I can make the effort to string this up one time. Still, I would not recommend it. I don't even think looms are expensive. I just don't like spending money I don't need to. Ta-da! I forgot to turn my mic on here, but at this point, all I'm saying is, I think that's actually gonna be pretty good. I actually didn't realize what I had done wrong with this lacing until I was editing this video and looked up images of looms. I had the yarn going in and out at the same point, but the in and out should really be about 1 centimeter apart, like the way it is laced on the nails. It definitely made it more tricky to space the weaves properly, but that's an easy fix for next time. It's starting to look like some weaving-ish, sort of. Can you see it? Sort of. So let's put some scraps in there, because the thing is, this is looking way too neat, which is crazy that that's happened, but this needs to be a lot messier. So let's just make it messy. I've got some little like random strips, let's just put them in. So I suppose that while I'm doing some weaving, having refused to even look up what a loom looks like beforehand, actually, you know what, let me defend myself on that. I did look up one tutorial, but they sped up all the important bits because I guess it was for people who already knew what they were doing, and that was kind of the limit of my patience. And I really did think I remembered what a loom looks like from that one time I wanted to buy one at a craft market like 4 years ago. Anyway, after doing all that and probably really annoying some weavers out there, is now a good time to remind you to like the video if you're enjoying it and subscribe if you haven't. Well, this is the longest stretch of me not talking in the video, so it's kind of where I have to do it. And it's like an alarm to take the bins out. If I don't remind you to do it, it won't happen. I'm just like the bins. Anyway, here is when my brother came in to show me his cowboy costume for a party he was attending. Okay, so how you take it off the loom, if I had one, / how you actually finish these is, I'll admit, something I probably should have looked up. I went with cutting the strings at the top and very carefully tying them so the weaving would stay taut. It seemed to work, but surely that's not right. Good morning. I'm wearing the I am one with the wall jumper. Again, I really need to dye this one. So, hello. I have been storing these all in just a little stack here. Let's have a look at how many we have. Okay, so we have 12 so far. And like, I'm pretty happy with the general cohesiveness, stay down, of it. But I do feel like it could just look like a bunch of rectangles together. And if we have a look at my reference images, the ones that inspired me, yes, they are all weaving. They have these like squares that sort of blend into each other because of all of the loops. I was aiming initially to make 16 pieces, and because of how time consuming they are, I think we'll stick with 16. I think the next 4, I'm gonna make ones where the borders blur a little bit more and then mix them throughout. I'm out of breath just from talking. So that it kind of makes it look slightly more cohesive, like it's one piece rather than like a bunch of rectangles sewn together. The next one I want to do, I had an idea for this last night. I can only describe it as kind of like a gathered drapey pile of croissants. That's what it is in my head. So let's get started with that one, and hopefully we get to wrap this up pretty soon. Okay, so this gathered croissant vibe one was a great way to use up a bunch of socks, and I seriously love how this one turns out. I basically ran a running stitch around little piles of socks and small scraps, gathered them up, and then went back around and stitched them in place onto the base fabric. I love that this one highlights that uneven dye job on the sheet. This was a pretty quick and, dare I say, cool way to use up a good amount of scrap fabric fabric. So this is a technique that I'll tuck away in my mind palace for something later on. Although let's be real, if my mind was a physical space, it wouldn't be a palace. It would be more like a dusty secondhand bookshop, or maybe like an op shop with piles of stuff about to fall over and an inappropriate amount of shelf space dedicated to food. At this point in the editing process, I ran into another delay on top of my general slow sewing and life stuff. We spent the afternoon at the emergency vet because Alfie ran into a wall and cut his face. So at the moment we're on keep Alfie company duty and making sure he doesn't scratch himself / walk into another wall. He's okay, he's having lots of cuddles and treats. It's way too cold to have my hair up and not be wearing a woolen jumper, so I'm in the same outfit as yesterday now. I actually really like this. It's really different to all the others. So color-wise, it might not fit super well, but I love it and it used up so much of the fabrics. There's a bunch of socks just tucked into there. Huh? I have had another idea. Any excuse to do some knitting? First day of summer tomorrow. I don't know if it's because I just had like an iced coffee that was really cold. It's made me physically really cold. Yet again, this was a pretty dumb way to do things. I thought that having so much variation in the fabrics would make it interesting to look at, but the knots are really annoying, and there is a better way to go about this with material like socks. We'll get to that later. As annoying as this was to work with, it did remind me how much I enjoy knitting, and bonus, when I picked up my knitting on my 5mm needles, it was such a joy. Okay, so that ball got us this far, which I think is maybe like just over halfway. And let me tell you, oh, this is making my hands hurt. It's quite a lot to wrangle. All the knots make it really difficult, and like it's pretty ugly. I went with a stocking neck because I figured that it's going to be sewn into other pieces and the weight will hopefully stop this from curling up. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I should have done like a seed stitch or something. Too late now. My instinct is to cut this out because it's so awkward, but this is just how long it takes. Good morning. My plan? My hope is that today is the last day. Dear viewer, it was not the last day. We have 2 more rectangles to do. Then we need to stitch it all together, hang it up somehow. That's the plan. I'm hoping I can get it done. I'm thinking I'm mostly gonna have to hand sew these pieces together, but I should be able to do that fairly quickly-ish, maybe? Let's get straight into it. First day of summer. Okay, so I can't believe it took me this long to figure this out, but I want some like long dangly strips that I can kind of hanging off of it, like in loops, like from the macrame examples. I was thinking that if you're gonna make a t-shirt yarn, you would kind of cut it in a spiral around the t-shirt. That'd be the best way to do it. That's what I should have been doing with the socks this whole time. So we're gonna cut this sock into a spiral so that we get a nice long loop that we can have a play around with. Isn't that a novel idea? It only took me 15 of these to figure it out. I have this gigantic stack of books that is my to be read list. And I love physical books. I just don't get that much time to read. And I was just like staring at my pile of books while we were eating dinner. And I was saying to Thomas that like, I want to go on a holiday where we just get like a house with a fireplace, maybe by the seaside in winter. I really enjoy the beach when it's really cold. Go to a cafe in the morning, get pastries and coffee, and then sit around all day by a fire and just read, and then maybe go for a walk along the beach. That is my current ideal holiday that I would really like to do. I would like to hear what your ideal holiday would be. This would have made the knitting yesterday so much easier. Also, by cutting it this way, it makes the label far less visible. That's better. Just Alf snorting. I will never not find it funny how my expression changes when Thomas walks in.
May I request some shortbreads?
Yes.
Thank you.
I feel kind of bad actually. I still haven't gotten around to making those shortbreads for him. Seeing as we are down to our last 2 pieces, I kind of went with just including my favorite elements from the previous designs in these and prioritizing the fabrics that can't go to textile recycling, i.e. the socks and underwear. This is it. This is the last one. I'm gonna start out by cutting out some more lengths, spirals of the socks, because I really wanna put some braids onto this one. I completely forgot up until I was partway through that one and I was really worried I would forget again, but I wanted to have some braids in it. So let's do that. I didn't think about how hard it would be to braid something that is this long and really stretchy. Ugh, it's bad. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. They gotta be loose. I did not think that socks would be this long. It's not what I was picturing. One downside of this project is that I've been able to make something pretty cool with such bottom of the barrel materials. I fear my craft hoarding will only get worse because I can really use everything and anything. I also have so many fabric scraps in my cupboards, so let me know what else I should make with all of it. I kind of like the idea of making some sort of waist monster costume, which is like heavily padded with all this fabric to give it a really interesting silhouette. I actually already have a huge list of projects I want to do. The hardest part of all of this is that while I'm making one thing, I add about 8 more ideas to the to-do list. I suppose it's a nice problem to have. Okay, so it's 5 p.m. and I do have to stop in a minute to start dinner, but we made it! 16 pieces! It's kind of hefty. I feel like that's a pretty good amount of fabric waste that has been saved. Let's start to lay it out and figure out if any of it can be machine sewed together, but I am probably just gonna quickly-ish hand sew it together. That's a pretty good size. I feel pretty good about that. It's my toes for reference. This is honestly, as my first layout, not that bad. I think that that one being so big maybe shouldn't be in that corner, and I also think I need it to offset how little that one is. So I think that these two shouldn't be on the bottom because it should be ones with the not so straight edges. Let me try and rearrange them. These two. Oh, hi. Hi. Hi, bunny. Do you think it's good? You like it? Oh, he's ready to fight. Oh. Where are you going? Oh. Yeah, that's it. That feels right. Okay, I'm gonna take a photo of this so I don't forget the order and we can start stitching it together. I'm gonna do it by hand, I can tell. It would just look bad if after all of this it was machine sewn together. So like, I don't know, hopefully that doesn't take a whole day. This is the last day. God, it better be. Let's get straight into sewing. Ah! All right, you know what time it is. It's time-lapse time. Oh, did you think that that was gonna be a time lapse that ended with me having this thing complete? No, no, no. We've hit a snag. So I just like lifted it up and I noticed this curve that's happening. It's like, ooh, ooh, So this is a broom handle that I purchased at Bunnings. The plan is to sew some loops onto the top and then feed it through this and hang this up on the wall. So we're actually gonna get straight onto sewing some loops onto it. I'm gonna hang it from my rig here and then sew them all while it is hanging vertically. That's the plan because I'm really concerned about how this is gonna hang. If I just keep going like this, it's gonna be real ugly. Yeah, we have a problem. Oh no, look at that. Oh, it's so bad there. Ah! It's unpicking time. I'm very tone deaf. It's unpicking time. Yay. Can you see the shape? Why did I think that sewing that straight would lead to a good outcome? We still have problems. So the first layer is good. But there's something happening here. So unsurprisingly, this knitted one seems to be causing some problems. Okay, I turned it around to the wrong side and now I can see the problem. What is going on here? What is that shape? It's like, wee. Yeah, I didn't know it was doing that. So, I think I'm gonna pin everything and see if the weight helps even it out. Okay, so with them all pinned in place, this is the back view, you can see there is some bad juju happening around this knitted one. Oh yeah, so that's pretty obvious. So it's like doing some weird stuff here. It's causing this to overlap. So unfortunately, I think I need to unpick this one entirely. Part of my problem here is that I wanted the edges to be all rustic, and therefore I ripped these rectangles to begin with, so they're not all the same shape. So if I was to do this again, I would actually cut them out on a grid and make sure that all of the pieces were the same size, and possibly reinforce them with something so that they wouldn't shift while I was sewing them, like has evidently happened with some of these. Like, I want it to be rustic, but I do want it to fit together. It's a learning process. The whole thing's about learning. We're learning so much. So many things we would do differently, like not putting just one singular knitted piece and one woven piece amongst a whole bunch of non-stretch fabric. There's a lot of things we could have done differently. I'm just going to attach one of these other spare rectangles into this spot so that it sits evenly, and then I'm going to sew my knitted piece onto that so that this isn't throwing off all of this. And we may have to do something similar for the woven one. Time lapse take 2. Hopefully this is it. I don't know if you can tell, but I have access to a wider range of music now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. Anyway, this solution worked great, and the knitted and woven pieces were no longer throwing it off, so that's a wrap on this project, and it's time for the reveal. Or should I say close-ups, because you've pretty much seen it already. This is so heavy. Is that better? Not really, you can't see. Oh, I hit the lamp. I am so happy with this. Like, not to get sappy or anything, but this kind of makes me feel like when people ask me if I'm an artist, I might be on my way to being more comfortable saying sort of. Oh, it's so heavy. I'm gonna hang this up. Okay, I cannot hold that thing for the wrap up. I was hoping to have it here. Well, I was hoping to do it in the hallway, but the lighting is weird. So yeah, I did it. I feel really good about this one. I really love it up in the hallway. It kind of looks like grown-up art, if you know what I mean. Without the rod, it weighs about 2 kilos. So 2 kilos of fabric waste that has been diverted from landfill, so it's pretty good. So I'll show you what we're left with. So this is some t-shirts and socks that I didn't end up dyeing. It's mostly t-shirts, I kind of ignored them from the beginning. This is our regular fabric waste. Apologies, it's under the table, I didn't have room. But these are all my general offcuts, and like the sheet, I had all these beforehand, so I'm not super stressed about those. But in terms of the socks and underwear that cannot be donated, that's what's left. That's pretty good. I am happy with that. So I feel like I've got some new fabric manipulation techniques under my belt. I think I have more ways that I can work with wasted fabric. It makes me pretty excited for what kind of things I might be able to do in the future. And I just had a real good time. So thank you for hanging out, and I will see you next time for who knows what. Bye.